We're going to talk about the New Orleans Pelicans now. I don't understand this team, Mark. I don't get them. They've gotten healthier, getting Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum back. Brandon Ingram over his last, what is it? What did I send you last night? It is over his last 10 games. He's averaging 27.5 points, 4.5 rebounds, 4.5 assists on 50, 40, 85 shooting splits. This team has lost, I think, 7 of those 10 games. They have CJ McCollum, who it feels like has not been awesome during this stretch, if I'm being completely honest. But they're obviously without Zion Williamson, and they're a team that is very dependent on Zion Williamson in a lot of different ways. Before I get into some of my overall structural takeaways about New Orleans, what is your overriding feeling on the Pelicans right now, who are actually tied in a big group of 4 teams right now between 9 and 11, or I guess that'd be 9 and 12, I'm sorry, for the last play-in spot?
Overall feeling is sad. That's how I feel right now, because this team, like, I mean, what they were doing up until the end of December, early in January, was just like, it's the best the Pelicans have ever looked in my lifetime. And I like you mentioned, I don't want to just chalk it all up to injury. I think injury has really hurt their rhythm and their ability to go off of what was working for them earlier in the year. I mean, my biggest thing, as much as I love Brandon Ingram, love watching him play, I think he's been fantastic, especially like you mentioned over this last stretch. This team just does not create anything easy in the half court, and it's been a big problem for them. Like, everything is so difficult, and I think that's been hurt too by what the spacing is around their team. Like, we saw this be a real issue 2 years ago when Zion Williamson got hurt. Or when he missed the entire season, I should say, because 3 years ago when he was playing and was awesome? I'm trying to remember. It's the years run together. But point being, when Zion first was really popping off, looking like an all-NBA player, you saw how well some guys who, even if they had some spacing issues, they really were able to thrive off what they did. Like, Najee Marshall's a guy who's been so good playing alongside Zion Williamson, who can play off of him, having guys who can handle the ball outside of him, attack what he creates or attack gaps, just be smart moving without the ball. Even if they have shooting woes, like, that just clicks. It works. And I think when you go from what Zion's creating to what those advantages look like with BI and CJ, like, it's just so different. Like, I think defenses aren't impacted nearly in the same way. And as good as those guys are as contested shot makers, like, CJ hasn't had that level of year. I think it's been, like you mentioned, it's tapered back down a little bit lately, but he started off really cold for the year. I think it's been better overall in 2023. But I think with what their role players are, again, like, good role players, but they're role players who really thrive with Zion. It's not a roster built to be carried by Brandon Ingram. And I also don't think Brandon Ingram is capable of carrying them, to be honest. Like, I think that there was a stretch last year where his passing and ability to get into the paint was like, just at a level that we'd never seen before. It's not there right now. And I think that's not to be unfair to him like that. But I do kind of, like, it's one of the things where it's like, I just wish you could get back to that. Like,
it's really interesting because I think that is the biggest problem with this team right now, is they don't have any way to pressure the paint unless it's like Jonas Valanciunas. Like, one of the things that, like, people talk about with the New Orleans Pelicans, the people around the team, the people that often are, in a case where they are as a beat writer for the team or a blogger, whatever you want to call them, and they go to press conferences and stuff. What Willie Green talks about is he wants this team to shoot more threes. He wants them to space the floor better. He wants them to play the math game more. This team is 27th in 3-point attempt rate this season. And he knows that and wants that to change. But the problem for them in terms of changing that the best way to get open 3-pointers is by driving and kicking, collapsing defenses and spraying it out. They don't really have that first level of being able to do that, I think. CJ McCollum has improved as a distributor and playmaker, but he just doesn't really have the burst to beat guys off the bounce consistently. Brandon Ingram, it's just not like his idea. It's not what he does a lot of the time, to like try and like get into the paint and like drive and kick. Like he wants to get into the paint and get to the mid range. He wants to get to the paint and or get into like the 15, 17 foot area. Right. I don't know. It just feels like they don't pressure the paint a lot. They don't really get that penetration. And that is something that will change when Zion Williamson comes back. There's arguably no better paint presence in the entire NBA. And I think on some level, this team was built with the idea of having Zion there and having that elite level paint pressure all the time that collapses defenses and opens things up for everyone else. But I do think that this showcases how difficult things are for the Pelicans without him. And just looking through the on-off numbers, looking at play-by-play stats right now, Daryl Blackport's great site, with Brandon Ingram, CJ McCollum, Zion Williamson, the Pelicans are plus 14.9 in terms of net rating this season. With Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum without Zion Williamson, they are a negative 11.1 net rating this season, and that's in like 460 minutes. And the big difference there, I mean, look, they're terrible on both ends, but they only have a 110 offensive rating in those minutes with Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum without Zion Williamson. It's hard. I get that this team has been built for Zion Williamson, but they got to be able to play without him. And it feels like right now they're just really struggling to play without him.
Yeah, and I would add too, I think what my biggest struggle has been for them is the way that their defense has kind of evaporated. Like it's not like it's the worst thing of all time, but it hasn't been nearly as good lately. And I think part of that is like when your offense dies down to this level, it's really hard to not get killed in transition, which I think they've struggled with, particularly, when you're playing JV 20 to 25 minutes a game. It's not to be unfair to him, but like just any 7-footer, it's hard to be an effective half-court defense when you don't get set in the half-court. So I think that's been a struggle for them. And their overall communication just hasn't been there like it was at the beginning of the year when their defense was really popping. Like I think part of it is it feels like they're always kind of trying new lineup combinations, but also like they'll play JV a little bit higher up, show, recover, and try and rely on backline rotations. But then like the tagger, the tagger will release early or late, or it's just always like a little bit offbeat and not right. And it's really killed them, like not being completely locked in on what they need. And I think they're just in a really tough spot of not having a go-to right now on either end, other than making tough shots. And they're not doing it at a high enough level for it to carry them.
Yeah, so I just pulled up Synergy right now. They are in a virtual tie for third worst in terms of percentage of their possessions that result in transition opportunities for the opposing team. 17.4% of their defensive possessions currently are transition possessions, which is really bad. It's really, really hard. And I would imagine, frankly, that number is worse over the last little while, as you said, because it does feel like that is often where they're getting beaten a lot of the time, is out in transition defense. And the thing that frustrates most fans is that lack of 3-point shooting, right? I get it. Like they have great shooters. Like Brandon Ingram can shoot the basketball. CJ McCollum can shoot the basketball. Trey Murphy is an absolute sniper from 3. They have guys that theoretically can really, really shoot. You would think they should be better, but they're just not. And this team might just desperately need Zion Williamson back to make the play-in tournament. And if they don't get Zion back, I honestly think that this is probably the worst team right now within that little race, at least in terms of how they're playing currently.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree with that. And I think part of what's really frustrating and difficult too, that I understand from a fan perspective, like I mean, it's been cool to see Kira Lewis get a little bit of run lately. Like that's been nice, and I think he's had some nice moments too. But it's more so like, okay, well, Dyson Daniels is just not playing anymore. Like he's out of the rotation. Part of that is because of the Josh Richardson trade. Like you make the move for Josh Richardson to bolster your rotation for a playoff run. Well, right now it's not a playoff run. Like I think, and I don't know. Like
is Josh Richardson better than Dyson Daniels right now?
Yes and no.
I genuinely think it's like pretty close.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like that's what I'm saying. I think from a coaching perspective, I get exactly why Willie Green's going to say, okay, well, I'm going to play Josh Richardson. Like that guy's a vet. He knows his role. He knows what he's going to do. But also, like Dyson was playing well earlier this year. Like he really brought good things. He fits what his team wants. He's bigger. I honestly would say he's a better defender than Josh Richardson. Like Josh can do some good things, but largely I'd just rather put Dyson out there with what he does. Dyson's a better passer, moves the ball better. Like, no, he's not going to bring the same as a ball handler yet. I don't think. Like, he can do some stuff bringing it up the court. I don't think that he's the same way of like getting into the paint, but like Josh doesn't really get into the paint either. No, like, exactly. Like, I agree. Like, I'm just saying, like, that's part of the difficulty in like when you don't have a real lead guard and you're trying to figure some of that stuff out. It's difficult. That's probably the only like the biggest nitpick I would have with Willie Green right now. Like, just I would so much rather see Dyson out there. And who knows? Maybe there's stuff going on behind the scenes I don't know about. But just based
he played like 13 minutes last night, so like I would think that like he's playable. It's just what's going on. You know, why is that not a thing? And obviously they're missing. You know, Jose Alvarado is hurt right now as well, and like there are a number of things going on that you can point to. Larry Nance is out as well. Like I think he's out for another week. Right?
Jackson Hayes has not been good. Like he tries, like he does some energy stuff, but I still just am really not there with where he's at right now.
Yeah, like it's funny. Like you look at Jackson Hayes' numbers versus Larry Nance's numbers, and you wouldn't really see much of a difference. But then you watch the games, and it's just like, oh my god, Larry Nance just structurally helps them defensively and helps their ball movement so much more every single time he's out there. It's I'm bummed for I agree with you. Like that overriding feeling of just being bummed is where I'm at on this. Yeah. Right.
And I really hope that they can just get back to something. Like I know Wendy reported the other day, or maybe it was just more got aggregated, but just that there was like no sight line on when Zion was going to come back. I just hope that goes away because I just miss watching that dude play. I hate the discourse around it whenever he's not playing. Clearly he was in shape this year. I don't think if you're debating that, you can talk to a wall as far as I'm concerned, but like, it's just like seeing what this team had earlier in the year. And Steve Jones Jr., our friend, put this on Twitter. Like you still see moments of what they can do. Like you see the stuff that has been their bread and butter all year, and it pops and then it goes away again. And so I think again, like every time I watch this team, I'm just like, even watching them against the Kings last night, like I thought the first half you saw some good stuff, and then again as things got away from them in transition, like I think the Kings are like that is like the worst possible matchup for them with how the Kings play. But it's frustrating, and I really hope that they can get back to it. Mainly just like that fan base deserves it, especially with what the beginning of this year looked like for them.
Yeah, no, I need this team to be good. I want to watch them be good. I want to watch Zion. And it's funny, like, you know, you're right. Like schematically, they are doing a lot of the same things. Steve is right. They're doing a lot of the same things, but it just has a lot less force when Zion like isn't the person running a lot of these actions, right? Yeah. Like you're running like dribble handoffs and like all due respect to Brandon Ingram, but like Brandon Ingram's like downhill force is just different than Zion's in a lot of different ways. And again, Brandon's been playing great, like offensively at the very least. It's just that it's not enough right now for this group.